Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Survivor Savant podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Newport, the self-proclaimed Survivor Savant himself. So, for this episode, we are doing things different now. It's no longer going to be audio from here on out in my podcast. It's going to be visual. You're going to see my face. You're going to see more of my crazy facial reactions as I talk about each episode that I've watched. And before we get started, I just want to say, show you guys this. I was cleaning my room. I was actually searching for drawing stuff because recently I've been getting back into drawing with more pen on paper or a pencil on paper, or rather than my phone. I mean, I'm still drawing on my phone, but nonetheless, I'm getting back to drawing on paper. But while I was searching for a sketchbook, I actually stumbled upon this, and I just thought I want to show you guys. And isn't that cool? Let me see if I can get everybody in on this. But isn't that cool? This is an old magazine from 2001, 2000, when Survivor Australia was being broadcast on TV, and there's the whole cast there from that season, and it's very cool. I was actually I found this when my parents and I were actually cleaning out our garage, and they had a lot of old stuff from back in the day, a lot of old magazines, old antiques, stuff like that. And this was actually, one of the deals that were found. And my parents, knowing how much of a big Survivor fan I am, let me keep this. And I don't know how big or how price-worthy this thing is. I mean, it hasn't been signed by anybody. I would actually like to get this signed in the future, or if I ever meet anybody from Survivor Australia, like Varner or Alicia or Jerry Matthew or Colby Donaldson. Shoot, even Tina. I would actually like to get this signed. And Kimmy too. Maybe Kimmy. He would be one of those. But yeah, I thought that was awesome that I stumbled upon this and just thought I'd show this to you guys. All right. So, now let's get into today's episode. Today we are talking about my thoughts and reactions after watching Survivor Africa episodes 1 through 3. Oh my goodness. I gotta say, watching this season back, it was probably one of the most fun seasons I've ever watched, mostly because it really builds up the factor of what kind of game these people are playing. Plus, it's in a new location. You got Africa and Kenya, no matter less, that they're shooting in. It's a new environment, still same game, and they're back to 39 days now. It's not 42 days anymore. They've had their fun with that, but we got back to 39 days. Now, if only we can get it back to 39 days in actual Survivor now instead of 26. Nonetheless, so let's start with episode 1. So the setting that they have for this episode is really cool. It's got a sunrise in the African savannah. You see giraffes and all kinds of different animals as we're walking across the savannah. And we then cut to a village, an African village. And it's not like an African village where it's all like grass huts and wooden and huts or pricker bushes surrounding the area. It's definitely more like a small village where there are buildings and brick buildings or stone buildings, and there's a lot of people walking around. Some were carrying baskets on top of their heads, some were just walking with sticks, some were dragging donkeys, and it was really interesting to get look into that kind of environment and see how people in Africa, especially in that area of Kenya, how they live. I know that a few tribes lived in. I know that there are a few tribes in Kenya that I can recall in my head that live around there. One is the Maasai, and as soon as we find out how we also the Samburu, and Boran, which those two tribes are the tribe names for this season. And we then get some kind of like truck coming in with the castaways on it, with Survivor Africa on top of the truck. It looked like it was a touring truck for people who want to go on a safari, which was interesting. What's also interesting is that in the driving part of the truck, we can see that there are two people there. One was driving the truck, the other was like, looked to be like some kind of guard or something, because he was holding a gun, and I guess he was there just to keep a lookout for any watch of animals, making sure that nobody gets attacked or anything, because you have people who are out here who are living in the wilderness for like 39 days, especially in the African savannah. You gotta make sure that they don't get cornered by a wild animal like water buffalo, or no, wait, not water buffalo. Good grief. Well, I think I might have to look at that again, fact check to see if there are water buffaloes in the Africa. But yeah, there are also wildebeests. There's also zebras, lions, giraffes, cheetahs. Cheetahs, I know, are one of them. There are also hippos, rhinos, and elephants. So gotta keep an eye out for those. And then also, as they're driving, we see Jeff introduce us to castaways and where they are, introducing it to us that the land is more, not desolate per se, but more drier than what we've seen from last season in that regards. And I gotta say, looking back at these seasons, I feel almost sad that we're no longer gonna be. I mean, I don't know what the future of Survivor is in that scenario, if we're gonna like go to other countries anymore. But it is sad to me now, looking back, that we're only getting Fiji as the main location for where we're gonna film Survivor and where we're gonna have Survivor on, and not the other countries like Africa or South America or Central America or Asia, for that matter, or Australia for that matter. But we're sticking with Fiji as the main location. It really gives you that nostalgia and how you feel like, oh, I wish I could see Survivor go around more, like go visit other countries. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I would kind of like to see a Survivor season where it's based in like Scotland or some kind of like European area where the culture is really interesting in that scenario, where there's more patterns. And I mean, we've seen that kind of pattern scenario will be used on a Survivor 44, where they use like Celtic medieval whole theme for their logo, for tribe symbols, and for props and tribal council and stuff like that. But it's as close as we're gonna get. Would I like to have a Survivor season where it's filmed in some kind of European country? Absolutely. Shoot, one of my buddies actually recommended Iceland to be a season where they would shoot for Survivor. And I'm not gonna lie, fans have been craving for a Survivor season where they've mostly just been in colder environments and not have to deal with the beach. They're interested in seeing how Survivor would play in that scenario. Will we ever see it? I don't know, but Survivor is meant for the beach, from what I hear from most of the casting producers. But anyway, we're on Africa now. So we are then introduced to Survivor theme song for the season, and I like how as we go through each seasons, they have their own different type of theme for the intro. Last season in Australia, we got like a lot of Aboriginal instruments from didgeridoos. I think didgeridoo was the only instrument that I heard that was Aboriginal in that intro. But anyway, we get the new season now. There's a lot of African chanting for that season's intro, along with a lot of tribal vocals, and it's really cool to hear. And we also get some nice cinematography of both the castaways, the environment, and the animals that we get to see throughout the season. So it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. I also like the logo. Obviously, hate the color. There's you got representing Africa, and you got the giraffe in the foreground, being the the main focus of the logo. And now let's get into the tribes. So, same as usual, we got 2 tribes. Both have 8 players, which means we got 16 people in this game. We got the red tribe, Samburu, which consists of Silas Gaither, a bartender, Kim Powers, who is a freelance marketer. We got Carl Blancioni, who is a father and dentist. We got Linda. Oh, I feel so bad for not remembering her name. Oh, wait. Is it Spencer? I think it's Spencer. I might have to look at that again. But I think it's Linda Spencer. She is a career counselor. Then we got Frank Garrison, who is a dad and telephone operator. No, not an operator, but he works on telephone poles, and he repairs them. How do I know this? Well, I have a friend of mine who I knew back in middle school who actually works as like a telephone, who works on telephone poles, and I'm sure that's a tough job to do. I'm not sure how well I would do that job, but if he can make it work, he can make it work. Then we got Lindsay Richter. I think that's her. Yeah, Lindsay Richter. I think she works in advertising, if I'm not wrong. She probably works in advertising. Then we got Brandon, who is also a bartender. And then finally we have Teresa Cooper, who is a mother and flight attendant from Tennessee. Wait, is she from Tennessee? Oh, why am I forgetting this info? But says the guy who calls himself the Survivor Savant, who remembers everything about Survivor. Good grief. But yeah, now, as we've seen, T-Bird is, she's kind of the fan favorite ever since she's first started on her season, and we have loved her since then, as she's gone on to do other great things. I'm sure you guys have heard Talking with T-Bird, which is another show collaboration she does on Rob Has a Podcast with Rob's sister, But I'm not gonna for spoil about how she gets last in game for those of you who are new. But we'll find out how eventually as we get down the line to that. And then we got the Baran tribe, which will always wear gold or yellow. I think it looks more yellow than gold. We have Ethan Zahn, who is a soccer player. We got Kelly Goldsmith. I almost forgot the name. I apologize. Kelly Goldsmith, who I think she does corrective writing, if I'm not mistaken. She does a lot of corrective writing in LA. Then we got Tom Buchanan, aka Big Tom, who is a goat farmer from Virginia. Then we got Kim Johnson, and as you guys have known from the beginning of this video, Kim Johnson was a grandmother, her former, I think she was a school teacher from what I remember. Her, she's retired though, and unfortunately though we've lost her back in July of 2024, and it was heartbreaking to hear that. You know, Kim was one of the favorites. She was only in her 50s when she got to be on the show, and I guess she was a living proof that no matter how old you can be, you can really live a life worth adventuring, and Kim was definitely a perfect example of that, as we could see throughout the season. Next we have Lex Vandenberg, who is a dad, and if I remember right, Lex is a very colorful character, to say the least. And I don't mean colorful by, he's out there, he's crazy and all that. He's got spiky hair, he's got piercings, and he's got a lot of tattoos. And it's really interesting to see a guy like Lex get to play this game. Next we have Diane Ogden, who is a mom and mail carrier from Nebraska. Then we got Clarence Black, who is a high school basketball coach from Detroit, Michigan. And finally, we got Jesse Camacho, who is a deputy sheriff from Orlando, Florida. Now, fun fact, shout out to Jesse, by the way, for liking my trailer for the podcast. She saw the podcast trailer on Instagram and she gave it a like. I thought that was cool. I got recognition from a former castaway. And I'm not gonna lie, I hope that this podcast, as it's kind of picking up, I hope I get more of a chance to have guest stars on his podcast, like former Survivor contestants, or maybe other Survivor fans from around the country. Or I know some Survivor fans who live in Canada, and it would be awesome to actually get to talk to someone from Canada. I know one of the people who we're not actually like close or anything. I know we got to talk a few times, and it was really cool. We'll get recognition from this guy. For those of you who don't know, his name is Russell. He has a YouTube channel called Russell Muscle TV. He is a big-time Survivor fan and hopes to be on the show one day, just like I am. So you guys go check his channel out. I'll leave it in the description. And by the way, I just want to say, as I'm recording this, I know that there's this beach drop in Tennessee going on in Nashville, Tennessee, for Survivor and celebrating its new season. That'll be coming up in 4 days from now. And I just gotta say, for all you who are looking at my Survivor beach drop video that I released a couple months back, talking about my experience of how I got out to there and how it all went down for me and who I got to meet. Thank you guys for watching that. I also want to give a major shout out to those who contacted me after watching that and who are asking me about how it all works and how you can get the tickets for the event and how does it work, how many people were there, what if there were going to be challenges there, or what challenges were there. I want to thank you guys for reaching me out, for giving you guys advice. And I know if you're watching this, I hope you're having a great time in Nashville, and I look forward to you guys getting to meet some of the castaways who are there, especially new castaways for the season. I got to watch our cast bios. I know some of them seem to be really good people, and they seem to enjoy Survivor as much as I do. So, and I just want to say good luck to the new cast. I hope you do well in this game. I kind of already have my prediction. I haven't thought about who the winner would be, but I already got my prediction list down on who would be early boots and who would be emerge and who would be jury. I already got that nailed down. I'm not going to say anything about who I think is the winner yet, because frankly, I'm already starting out on doing the earlier seasons for my podcast, and I would like to keep going from there. And it's a weird thing for me. Once I start something from the beginning, I gotta watch it from beginning to end. Like, go through all the seasons. And I know that might be kind of cringe, because you want to hear my opinion about what I feel like about the new season. And for the most part, I will give you guys my opinion time from time as I'm doing episodes each week as each episode comes out. But I'm mainly here to talk about what I feel my reactions are for current past seasons I'm watching. In this case, it's Survivor Africa. Now, back to that. Once we arrive at the drop point where the contestants are going to be, the guy with the gun and who's like guarding, he opens the truck door, and he's just like, down, down, faster, hurry up, down, down, down. He was really, I almost cough on that one. He was really informative about how well he makes sure that everybody got out and that there was no lacking behind in that scenario, making sure that everybody was here, everybody got to be in this game. And after he was done, he was like, have a nice day, bye-bye. And oh my goodness, that really let everybody know that they are ready to play the game, and the game was about to begin. We already got the tribes supplies out there ready for them to take with them to their camps. There's like a bin, not a bin, I'm sorry. There's a bin that has like, and it's like a woven basket of a bin, not like a, well, actually, no. I mean, I'm sure there were some crates. But yeah, there was everything from a map to their camp, a note telling them to grab as much as you need, but be wise because it's a very long trip, and knowing how much weight you're going to carry back to your camp, be wise about how much you take. I know there was a lot of things like spears, just keep an eye out for animals and make sure that they don't attack you or anything. There were also some canned goods, some plants or vegetable plants that they would have to do just in case of gardening. I remember Big Tom was like, we're on a safari, we're not here to go on a garden adventure. So clearly they were more focused on getting the canned goods because they think that'll be their best source of rations rather than and depending on vegetables. In the middle of African safari, Savant, just to point out. And I know there are several jugs of water or that they could also carry and gourds to drink out of if they need water. Okay. If I learned anything, not just from Survivor, but also from a certain movie that I love to watch called Zombieland, if there's one thing you should do, especially if it's a group of people, is to, okay, there's travel light, but there's also, take as much as you need without straining yourself. And I know that you're going to need whatever you need in order to get past the next several days. Just make sure that you know how to ration them and make sure that you know what is valuable for your tribe's key to survival. I know food and rations is one of them. Make sure you have clean water, and I know there are other items. I apologize. I know there are other items in there, like I saw that there was a drum. Like, who's gonna take a drum with them on a safari? unless you're wanting some kind of like entertainment. But at this point, it's no use to bring a drum with you. Oh yeah, I also remember there was cornmeal as one of the items for to eat. And okay, so immediately we could see all the tribes are gathered, are together. They're ready to start their adventure and go on a hike. They're giving these like wooden wooden stretchers, I'd say is the right word to use here. They're giving these wooden stretchers to help carry some of the items. It's like a 2-man stretcher to help carry some of the items. Now, as we see Baran carry our items. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I was just getting over her coming back from a trip, and I got sick, unfortunately. I had a stuffy nose. I got phlegm caught up on my throat. I was having to deal with ear infections on both sides of my ears. It's not good getting sick. Let's not be sick. Luckily, I'm not dying from COVID or whatever that stuff is. But I just want to let you guys know that yes, I was sick, but I'm totally getting better now. Oh, just because I'm coughing here and there, that's just an indication of like I just got a cough. That's it. And my ear infections are cleared up now. I can now hear on both sides. So if you guys are wondering why the heck is this guy being sick and why he's coughing, and if I'm ever coughing again, it's because I'm getting back from being sick. Now with that said, so we see Baran trying to carry some of their stuff, and Kim suggests because of how carrying 2 gourds with them is going to add so much, 2 jugs of water with them is going to add so much weight and pressure added onto them for their journey. It's going to be such a hassle to deal with that they think it's almost wise to just dump the water out now. That way there's a lot less weight to carry into them, and besides they got a well waiting for them when they get to camp that they'll get whatever water they need from there and just have to worry less about how to travel now and mainly focus on getting there. Now, here's my thoughts. You definitely need to recognize on what you think is most valuable to bring with you and what you think could be least valuable to help your tribe make it there in the end. And to really dump water on day 1, because water is such a crucial factor on survival along with fire. You need those 2 things to survive, and to dump all that water, that's clean water for you guys, is that could last you so long. And to really dump it on the first day, just so you can have a little less weight on your shoulders, that's a big risk to have. And it's a big risk, but it's a risk that Baran was willing to take. Now, Baran has a map to lead to her camp, and Diane, being a person who is experienced with going by the lay of the land, since she is a mail carrier, she goes to guide the tribe. And Tom was really worried about Diane and the fact that she might be leading them astray and not actually leading them to the camp at all. Being a goat farmer, he sees that some goats are a lot of followers, and when one goat goes to jump in the hole, the rest of them follow. And here they are following this curly-haired woman through the African savannah, not knowing that she might know what she's doing, and she's all focused on getting there, which I totally understand. It's one thing to make sure that the main objective is to get there, but it's also important to know how to get there. If you can read a map right, then you'd absolutely you will be fine as far as trying to get into where you're going to be for the next several days. So, eventually they do get to make it though. So, even after the heavy lifting that they got, I know Lex had the bag of cornmeal in his face, and he says he was carrying that stretcher along with Ethan. They eventually made it there. They were happy. They were filled with joy just to get there. And then we move over to Samburu. Now Samburu, this tribe this season and has a lot of different characters. I mean, for one, you got a dentist on your team, a very rich dentist because he does live a good life in Miami. You got Silas, who looks like he could be the next America's male top model. You got a couple young women who think that they're on a simple camping trip, along with Brandon, and who thinks he's on a camping trip, and then the only luxury item he has is chapstick. Meanwhile, you got Frank. Okay, so the first season of Survivor, we had Rudy, who was a retired Navy SEAL, didn't take no crap for anybody. He had no excuses. We had him. Second season, we had Marilyn, aka Mad Dog, who was definitely the same as Rudy. She's basically the female version of Rudy. Frank, I would say, is like what Rudy would be like when he was younger. Like, he's all work, no talk kind of person. He just wants to get there and get his stuff done and not really communicate and be social all that much. I'm not gonna lie, Frank for me is a guy who's kind of a double-edged sword in that scenario, because one, he is focused on the game. He's focused on the survival aspect of the game. He wants to make sure that his tribe takes things seriously. He wants to make sure that they all are able to live out there and be able to survive and do it just right by doing what needs to be necessary. So yeah, while everybody is wanting to take a break, hey, because some of the stuff is falling, and Frank is like, hey, okay, get what you need so that we can pick it up and continue on. Like, he's not there to talk. He's not there to socialize. He's not here to have a freaking vacation. He's here to do the survival aspect of Survivor and win the game. Frank is a very serious type. And in fact, he used to be in the Army. Now, I don't remember what branch of the Army he was in, but he did serve in the Army before he became a telephone. Here I am again, and not remembering what the heck the job is called, but yeah, he worked in the Army before he became a telephone pole mechanic. And everybody has their mixed opinions on Frank. Well, some of them, yeah, he's like the dad type. He's also somebody who nobody would really get along with, because Frank is not the social type. He's someone who doesn't want to like. Now, there is a point with his season, and that we'll get to, and that'll be in like the third episode, where I'm just gonna cut to it. As we'll see in the next couple episodes, there's an age gap between the Samburu tribe. We have the older people with Frank, Carl, T-Bird, and Linda on one side. Then you got the young people, Silas, Lindsay, Brandon, and Kim, or KP as I would call her, because there are two Kims on this season. And there's definitely a big of an age gap, as we'll see as the show continues, where some of them are taking this game more seriously, while some of them are just here because they think they're on a little camping adventure and they're here to socialize more and play the game. So there's that going on for them. And it's gonna be a real fun treat to see how well this all comes down in the end, knowing what lies ahead for them. So Samburu was able to make it to their camp, aside from them taking a couple breaks to talk, and Lindsay especially saying that she's having the time of the month again, and while on their trip, and Frank was like, "Hello, we're in the middle of Africa, people. Come on, let's move it." And they were able to make it there to their camp, but upon arriving, though, they were informed that their shelter is in need of some repairs. The stick mud hut is in need of construction, and also the the fence, the thorny bush fence, is in need of some repairs as well, to keep out wild animals from coming in. There also has to be a fire that needs to be lit at night, so that two people who are staying up can keep an eye out for any wandering or visiting animals, making sure that they don't get into the camp. If it were me in that scenario, I would kind of be terrified, but also kind of like very I would say up for it, because on one hand you're keeping a lookout, make sure that nothing bad's gonna happen, but at the same time you're dealing with wild animals in the middle of the African savannah, and you're worried that they might come in and probably attack you. But I recall, as me and my parents watched this season, and that the production team were probably on the sidelines as they're recording them, going, we probably shouldn't let people get eaten by wild animals like a freaking lion, and we gotta make sure that they're still safe, even though we have to make it look like that they're looking out for themselves. So they probably have a few who guards on standby with guns, making sure that had no animals getting near their camp, and they would have to get a good look at him for screen time, but they wouldn't let anything happen to them. Not like that. After all, they don't want to get the show shut down, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, we see that the tribes are repairing their camp after making sure that no animals are able to get in. But upon doing that, though, both tribes discovered that there's something with the water, and how if you put it in a gourd, and if you leave the gourd cap off, or if it's broken or something, the water almost turns into some kind of sick turpentine kind of liquid. If you drink it, you're almost gonna get sick. And I remember Lex on Baran was like, hey, if you're not boiling your water properly, you can basically end up with amoebic dysentery, and that will lead you up to the point where you're possibly puking and I use a term lightly here, crapping your guts out. And nobody wants that. Nobody wants to get amoebic dysentery. I've seen ghosts to know what that's like. Poor Isaac. But now they are told that there are springs or some kind of water or well to go get their water from. Downside though, animals like to go around there too. As we see at Samburu's camp, when they go to their water or well, they can see that it's all grassy and muddy and occasionally some animal poop. And it's disgusting. I'm not gonna lie. The fact that they had to get their water from that place is disgusting. But Baran was able to think around that, as we see Tom and Ethan dig out some kind of like open area to get clean water from, rather than having to get at their water from the other open area where all the grass and poop are. They dug out this open earth area, almost like a puddle, almost not like a puddle, more like a small water hole, and that way they'll be able to get somewhat clean water to bring back with them as they're filling up their jugs. And I know Tom, as he's digging along with Ethan, he's having a good old time, being a good old country boy that he is, singing. And after they dug, he splashed in the water almost like he was an elephant, and trying to show people that he's fun and wild. I know. Okay, let's be real. Having to drink water and having to make sure that's boiled is probably a tough thing to do. I know it's struggling in that environment, and especially in the African savannah where it's so scarce and you're having to deal with such a hot temperature that you feel like almost not eating or drinking anything. And I know it was really hard on Jessie, especially, where she tried drinking but she would just throw it up after. It's hard to see that, the fact that nobody could drink anything or eat anything after being in a tough environment like that. I know it's hard. As we see, we then see that both tribes are trying to make their fire. Now, as everybody knows, fire is life out there, and if you can't make a fire, you're basically dead out there. They tried many ways to do it. One was a stick bow method, to where if you take a wooden bow and a stick and start shifting it and from side to side, and as the stick is moving and you're trying to burn on the wood, but that wasn't working. I know Baran was doing the same, and eventually sometime around on Samburu, they actually had a medical kit, a first aid kit with them that had all the things they need, like bandages and gauze and other fun stuff that, if I mention in this video, I'm gonna feel really sick to my stomach. But one of the other things that were in there was like a telescope or spyglass to keep a lookout for any animals that come by. And Kim or Lindsay thought about, well, if they could take the top of the spyglass as like the main glass to look through, maybe they can make a fire with that by getting it through the sunlight from it through that glass. And I know Silas he took it and he grabbed some elfin dung. By the way, elfin dung, if you're out there or in the wilderness, it's elfin dung. It burns real good, real nicely. I feel bad for talking about elfin dung and feel disgusted almost, but elfin dung actually burns real good. And as Silas is using the glass from the sun and trying to burn the elfin dung, he is getting a lot of smoke, and he tries blowing on it, and he's getting a lot of smoke in his face, a lot of heat. And eventually, as he continues to do so, Frank and the others were like getting sticks and grass and put on top of it, and eventually Samburu did get a fire started, and that's great. Now there are three things. Three things that can work out well for you if you're trying to get a fire started. One, flint, the absolute number one thing to use out there or for camping. Two is to use a magnifying glass or glasses, that way you can get the sun to like start the fire for you. Third is the wooden bow thing and sticks. If you can do that properly, you'll be able to manage a fire. Take it from me, from a guy who's raised by a dad who has done some camping before in his life, and knows how to live out there in the wilderness and how to camp and start fires and make sure that fire is properly managed. I even built a fire pit with them, so I know what he's talking about. Now we get into the very first challenge of the season. It's not a relay race. What the heck? It's kind of more like not necessarily like a chariot race, but they do have these like wagons that they have to carry with them. Now this is a very classic challenge called Quest for Fire. They got these two wagons with them that they have to push along the obstacle course or race course for the challenge. Along the way, they have to light some fire towers. Once the tribe has light a flame on top of their tower, or they move on to the next one. And the first person to make it to the end wins immunity. The first tribe, not the first person. The first tribe to make it wins immunity. And it was actually a really tough race, to say the least. I know some of them were going through like dirt and sand and oh my goodness. I know Ethan, for one, as he was like taking the cart or wagon and along with the tribe, he was trying to push it, and I remember at one point he would like stop and he was just getting like tossed over the wagon. I'm like, holy crap. Oh, that's gotta be tough to see and tough to witness. And I know Ethan probably felt a lot of pain after that. I don't know for sure, but also I want to point out something. I noticed that, okay, so you know how Samburu is red and Baran is gold, right? If those are tribe colors, how come they have the opposite tribe colors on their wagons? Like literally, I see Baran pushing or pulling in a red wagon and Samburu was pushing a gold wagon. I think they were supposed to be on the opposite sides. I mean, am I wrong or am I right? I think that was a major flaw that production crew probably saw and were too late to fix. But I know for a lot of people, it was a tough challenge, and I know Diane was definitely struggling through that a lot. As we see at the end, she was on the ground, almost like her eyes wasn't rolling up to her eye, the top of her head, but it was really, oh boy, I could probably tell that it was a hard challenge for them all. But with that being said, in the end, Samburu was able to win in the very first challenge and win the immunity idol. And the immunity idol actually looks kind of cool. I like how it's very tribal-like in the African, and with the two people and how the hair is like almost like hay or straw kind of deal. Oh, I thought that was cool. But unfortunately, Baran has to go to tribal council. They have to vote someone out. It's not an easy thing to do. And I know they have a few people in mind for that after the first challenge. One I know of is Jessie, because she has been getting sick. I mean, she couldn't even get the water down. Two was Diane, because she was kind of struggling in the challenges, and knowing Survivor, you had to keep the strongest players around in order to win more challenges, and Diane is a weak player to keep around. However, one of the strong players that Baran has on their tribe, aka Clarence has got a little bit of a food issue. Let's say that. There was a certain point where they had canned cherries they had canned goods. One of the canned goods was cherries, and they were each taking one cherry and passing it on to the next person as they take one cherry and pass it on, so forth, so forth. However, Clarence, after he got the can, he didn't take one cherry. He took 2 cherries and passed it on. Now, this game is a game of not only survival, but also trust. And the fact that someone could be so bold and taking 2 cherries, that almost kind of shows their true colors a bit. And it almost gives it a question of trust, which is actually the name of the first episode. It almost gives him a question of trust from Clarence, because he didn't take 1 cherry, he took 2 cherries. And if this was a guy who didn't care about anything else except for food, and he thought he deserved more food out of everybody, then I would kind of almost feel kind of weary about Clarence after that moment. And after the challenge, there was one point where the tribe had to go get water, and Clarence and Diane stuck back because Diane was feeling really weak after her challenge, and Clarence stayed behind to look after her. But while they were at the watering hole, a lot of the tribe kind of felt suspicious about Clarence, and that they were worried that he might take food again after the cherries. And when they got back, somebody smelled something was cooking, and it was a can of beans. And immediately everybody felt skeptical about Clarence, because Clarence was admitting that he opened a can, and it was a judgment call that Clarence opened a can for Diane so she can get some strength. And for somebody to do something without the tribe's consensus, that is a major no-no, because you're doing something that's outside of the tribe's how do I put this? You're doing something without the tribe knowing. And that's a really bad thing to do. Like, doing something without someone's consent is really bad, and it really puts a bad light on you. And I know it did for Clarence, because he already had a bad light on him after he took the cherries, after her 1 cherry incident. But the fact that he opened a can of beans without asking the tribe was a really bad thing. And now, especially since they had to go to tribal council later, this was not the best time to do this. And Clarence was telling everybody that he was sorry, and Big Tom was definitely weird of Clarence now after that, and he definitely feel like he cannot trust Clarence. And Clarence was telling everybody that him and Diane had shared beans together, and that absolutely made Clarence more of a person they could least likely count on. And Diane was even admitting that, or stating that she did not eat the beans, and that it was mostly him. And Clarence was on the side like, Diane, what are you doing? Why are you lying? To this day, everybody who has watched that episode is still trying to clarify if the beans thing was Clarence's fault or Diane's fault. Like, who's to blame on that? To this day, nobody has even figured it out. And I will admit, I do think it's wrong that Clarence opened the can and without anybody's consensus. But I will not keep around a liar. I will not keep around somebody who would be lying to my face about who did who and leave them out of it. Especially someone who's Diane, who's already weak enough as it is, that she feels like that she's on the outs. And if Clarence is fully getting blamed on getting to open the beans without the tribe's permission, then that would shed a target on him more than it would on her, making it look like that she would stay around more than he would. And that did seem to be the case in that scenario, because Clarence, even though he's good for challenges, he can't be trusted with the food rations that the tribe has. And as we see, as we get into tribal council, as we see it here at tribal council, it's an African village surrounded by, the same foreign bush border that they have at their camps. It looks cool. It's a really nice presence to have. And we get into the vote, and we see that Tom and Diane were very adamant about voting out Clarence because they can't trust him with the food. Even though he's good for challenges, he feel like he can't be trusted with their rations. But even though there was 2 votes for Clarence, it was 6 votes to vote Diane. So the first person voted out of Survivor Africa was Diane. That's 1 person down on Baran, 7 left, and Samburu is still the same. We then move on to the second episode, and after tribal council, Clarence is definitely feeling weary about being on his tribe, and now realizing that he screwed up. He was trying to admit his faults, and he hopes that he can move on and really improve after that. And he was confining with Jesse, who did vote Diane but didn't vote for Clarence. But she absolutely felt that she couldn't trust Clarence either, because she knows that Clarence is not somebody who could look after her or is not willing to keep a lookout or watch out for her back. And we could see that trust is absolutely number 1 factor in this game. Trust in numbers is a major factor, especially with the fact that with Baran, there's more guys now than there are girls. Like, there's only 3 girls on the tribe when you include Jesse, Kim Johnson, and Kelly Goldsmith. And they're absolutely worried that if it were down the line to where they were to go tribal council again, they're worried that they're just going to get all the girls out because guys are much more stronger than girls. But I will say this though, we've been proven that time and time again in past seasons of Survivor, no matter if you're a guy or a girl, that won't be a major factor. I mean, yeah, challenge strength is like something crucial to have on your tribe, but where is your challenge strength at? Is it physically or mentally? That's something really important to think about on that factor, and aside from just based on gender. But we also see that there's kind of an alliance forming with Lex and Big Tom, and also Ethan, he's very paranoid, as he has stated. He's paranoid about the fact that he was being included on like an alliance with Lex and Big Tom, because is he including him in because they're thinking they want to keep him secure and make him feel safe before he gets voted out? That's kind of like a paranoid factor coming into play in that scenario, because you don't know if you're safe, you don't know if you're good, you don't know if you're going to be the next target. So I feel a little bit right to be paranoid, but at the same time, you gotta read the room. And I recently watched a video where Jeff states that the number 1 key element that is looked upon and is in fact missed on Survivor is your emotional reading, or emotional learning how to read emotions is really important. Knowing how to read the room and how to see who you would get along with the best and who you wouldn't get along with the best. And if you don't know how to get, and if you feel like you can't get along with this person really well, then know how to get along with them so that you can stay on their good side. I feel like it's a really important key factor or that some people might miss in this game. And I'm hoping if I get to play Survivor, I get to carry that into this, because being on the autism spectrum, you're not really reading emotional or social cues all that well. So I'm hoping that if I get to play this game, I will know how to read the room well and know who I feel comfortable with and who I know doesn't feel comfortable around me. So I know how to read a room and learn how to build a well-structured foundation off of, if I know how people perceive me as and how I'm being portrayed as. And I hope that I can be able to really improve upon that. But anyway, we then cut to Samburu, and this is where we start to see the age or generational gap being shown on this tribe, where the younger players are more sleeping in at the camp, while the older crowd is more getting up early and wanting to get started on all the work. And they start to notice that, and they realize that, there's definitely going to be a division between the young and the old. And the old folks know that they need to have all the numbers on their side, so that way they could they could avoid having it be a kind of like, they could avoid having like a split or a tie vote, because they're worried about going to a deadlock. And although I will say, never mind, I digress. So to really make sure that the old folks have the numbers, they go to Silas, who's kind of like the older person out of the young group, if that means anything. And they know that Silas is really serious about the game, and he knows that this is a game and we're all trying to get to the end. And the older crowd are trying to convince Silas that they don't really care about the game all that much as he does. This is a game for $1 million, and you're not here to play nice. As people stated before, nice guys don't win in the end. Nice guys are last. I mean, in my opinion, I think depending on which nice guy, I feel like, hey, they could definitely show a longer lasting impression. But that's just my opinion. And no, I'm not gonna say anything about that. I'm not gonna say. But they try to confide in Silas to be on their side, and at one point Silas does agree and tries to convince them that he's on the older group side and leaving the young people out. But the one person who immediately catches on about this is Lindsay. She suspects that they're trying to bring Silas over to them, and she immediately caught wind of that. And she absolutely feels that the old people absolutely hate the young people because they don't work as much as they do. Now, I'm for one gonna flat out say, the fact that you're not really pushing your weight around camp and that you're not really doing as much as they are, that just kind of shows your dang, I can't think of maturity. That's what it is. That kind of shows your maturity in that scenario and how you're not really taking things seriously. I think that really shows. But Silas is then trying to tell Lindsay that he's all in with them, and he's got to make sure that the young people are staying in this game more than the old people. And you kind of see like a double-sided I I already said double-sided, but it would be weird to say double-sided side of Silas, where he's playing to both sides, and it doesn't matter how he gets to the end as long as he gets there. And does that mean he's being a flipper, as we say in the Survivor community, being a flipper on both sides? Then that's what he's gonna do, and that's how he's gonna ride till the end, because he's more concerned about getting to the end and winning $1 million rather than focusing on who he likes more and who he's going to play the game with more. He's definitely focused on that scenario. So we get into the reward challenge, where there's this big pole or foundation, and the tribe members would have to take I apologize. The tribe members would have to take a different length of like a step, different steps and different lengths over to, it's like a race. So you have tribes starting on one side and another tribe starting on the other side, and they're taking one step with them as all the tribes are going across this like race or course, and they're crisscrossing and they make it to their challenge or foundation area, and they had to place the step into the hole of where a step needs to go, and they go back and get the next step. Once they have all 5 steps, one person from each tribe has to be at the top of the foundation in order to win the challenge. First person to make it to the top wins it for their tribe. Now, the reward in that scenario is the rest of the supplies, the rest of the supplies that they didn't take with them on their trip. Wherever they left behind, the winning tribe gets to take it with them back to their camp. So the gardening stuff and the drum and who knows other stuff that they... Oh, by the way, I just remembered, there are mosquito nets as well. Mosquito nets to have them over you as you're sleeping, making sure no bugs get in or something like that. I've never slept in a mosquito net before. It's very interesting. Maybe I'll try it one of these days. I don't know if I'll look into it. But we get into the challenge, and we already see that the tribes are like even. I mean, I know Baran has one tribe member less. By the way, Samburu had to sit somebody out, and they sat out Linda. So all the tribes, it's pretty even at this point, with how well they've made from the start to the finish, and how they're getting one step over there and one step have another step. We definitely see on Baran though that there was one point where Kim Johnson fell, and it definitely shows that she was kind of like a weak player in that scenario because she fell. And after a few cuts, eventually we get down to the last step, and after Kim Johnson fell, Samburu got the lead. They were able to place the final step, and Kim Powers was able to make it to the top, and Samburu once again won the challenge. Another devastating loss for Baran. It was bad, especially for Kim, who, even though she was getting a lot of positive feedback or some kind of assurance from her tribe that it wasn't her fault that they lost, and she even admits that she knew it was her fault, and even though you're trying to be nice to her, she knows that she fell for her tribe. It's a hard thing to realize. I mean, I know it's one thing to admit denial that you didn't do anything wrong, and that you did, but it's also nice to know that you can accept that you had your mistakes and your faults that you've done, and the one thing you can focus on making sure that it doesn't happen again and learn from it. if I learned one thing from The Lion King, by the way, rest in peace, James Earl Jones, you will be missed. You are a really fantastic actor, and you will be missed. The past can really hurt you. It hurts sometimes, but there's one thing you can do. Well, two things you can do. You can either run away from your past mistakes, or you could face them and learn from them. And that's a really important message in life that a lot of people have to learn, that while you have made a few mistakes in your life, you can either run away from it or you can learn from it and not make that mistake again. And as we see in the next immunity challenge, now this immunity challenge, it's the gross food immunity challenge, and normally in this challenge you would be eating bugs or some kind of like cow's brain or pig tongue or something like that, or pig snout. But for this challenge, it's an interesting take. The tribes, they meet up at this like bar set up by the cast, not the casting team, the production team. And Jeff is there. He's kind of like being the bartender. He's got the immunity idol back from the tribe. And the tribe is informed that in Africa, the tribes, they don't really eat meat. They don't really eat a lot of vegetables. But there are two things that they do who enjoy: milk from cattle and blood from cattle. And when I heard that, I'm like, oh geez, they're gonna be drinking blood. And then to my shock, there are these two tribesmen. One of them, ironically, I think one of them was named Isaac. No, wait, Charlie. Charlie was his name. And they brought out this big cow. Well, he wasn't that big, but they brought out this cow. And Jeff admits that when he saw this actually be done in front of him, he was a little freaked out by it. But the tribesmen let him know that this is how they do it for thousands of years. And the cow is actually not, he won't be, permanently damaged from this. But Charles, or Charlie, he takes a bow and arrow. The guys are holding the cow in place. Charlie fires the arrow at the cow's neck, and blood starts spewing out as Jeff starts getting in there and taking the blood as it's dripping out. And it's kind of disgusting to see that, but oh my gosh. It's interesting to see that this is how tribesmen of Africa have been living off of. And Jeff assures everybody that they tested and quarantined this cow and that the blood is clean. And after he got the blood that he needed, they were able to cover it up, make sure that the bleeding stops, and they took the cow away. Now, Jeff takes the cow's blood, he pours it into a pitcher, and he also takes some cow's milk and pours it into the same pitcher as the blood. He stirs it up, making sure that's all nice and mixed in there. Now for this disgusting food challenge, it's shot for shot. One person from each tribe will go up, they will be given a shot of milk blood, if I'm using the term right, and whoever says no to it loses a point for their tribe. Whoever has the most points at the end wins the challenge. Now because Baran has one tribe member one tribe member less than Samburu, the first person who goes up will also have to go last for your team. Alright, the first person for Baran was Lex. Now Lex is going up against was it Frank or Brandon? Or maybe it was Silas. But anyway, Lex was the first person up. He's also the he was also the last person up for Baran. They were able to take the shot, drink it with ease, and next was Big Tom and Carl. They were able to take the shots. Ethan and oh my gosh, I feel so bad. Alright, let's be real here. I have been out of a loop since the last time I've recorded an episode of this podcast. I have been out of the loop. I've been really losing my mind. I've been dealing with my sickness, and it's been an interesting deal to say the least. But nonetheless, I'm trying to get back in it. Yes, I'm in kind of like a phase where oh, look at this guy. He's really bad at recalling what happened in Survivor and all that. But I'm letting you know, I'm still going to give it my best. I'm still going to tell you guys my thoughts and reactions about this. In fact, I will say how I feel about this challenge. I found this challenge to be kind of disgusting because on one hand, you're drinking blood. That's kind of like a gross thing to do. Unless you're a freaking vampire, drinking blood should not be that fun for people to do. I mean, if you're eating a bug, it's one thing. That's at least protein. But you're drinking straight cow's blood. Well, cow's blood drinking and milk, but nonetheless, this was probably the most gross food eating challenge I ever saw, or in this case, gross drink challenge. But it won't be the last, I'll tell you that much. Well, at least the last of the cow's blood. I mean, that would be the last time we ever see anybody drink cow's blood on Survivor. But it won't be the last time anybody drinks a disgusting drink. I'll say that much. But anyway, everybody got their shot. Everybody was able to drink it down. Even Linda, who had blood on her face, was able to drink it down. I know Kim Johnson, even after her little stumble in the last challenge, she was able to drink it down with ease. And shoot, even Jessie. Now, she was having a hard time eating and drinking out there for a while, but she was able to step it up for a challenge. I'll say that much. Good for Jessie for stepping up. But anyway, after everybody had their shots, it now comes down to a tiebreaker, where in this case, Samburu chooses one person from Baran, and Baran chooses one person from Samburu. Now, Samburu chose Kelly from Baran, and Baran chose Linda from Samburu. Now, for this challenge, it's going to be different. Instead of shots, they're going to have mugs. And instead of milk and blood, it's going to be straight cow's blood. On his go, both Kelly and Linda have to drink all the blood from the cup, and the first person to get it all drank down and show an empty mouth wins the challenge. It was really disgusting to see people drink blood, and it was really interesting to see how it all turned out. Now, both Kelly and Linda were able to take a drink from it, and I know they were chugging as much as they could, but let's face it, I'm sure drinking cow's blood's gotta be difficult. But eventually, Linda was able to succeed, and once again, Samburu won the challenge. Even though Kelly had experience chugging or done drinking in games in the past, she wasn't able to successfully drink all of it, unfortunately. So yeah, Samburu won, and Baran unfortunately had to send somebody home again. Now, Big Tom, even though he was upset at Clarence for taking the cherries and doing the beans and all that, he was able to forgive him, but he still doesn't forget. And just to teach Clarence a lesson that even though they are getting rid of somebody and not him at that tribal council, he still wrote his name down to show that he's not going to be safe all the time. And we can see that in this vote. And even though Jessie had been trying her hardest and really trying to make sure that she was able to succeed, she still couldn't physically eat or drink anything while at camp. I know it's been hard on her, but unfortunately, with 4 votes Jessie and no need to read the last vote, she was unfortunately voted out in a 5-2 vote. So Jessie is the second person voted out of Survivor Africa. Unfortunate, especially for a deputy sheriff, but everybody has their ups and downs. We then cut to the next episode. Late at night at Baron camp, Clarence and Kelly were at the fire keeping it lit, also keeping a lookout for animals, and they saw or at least heard some animals walking or growling in the background. It was actually a lion. A lion was growling in the background and making noises, and I know Kelly and Clarence were banging pots or making some kind of noise to tell it to go away, making sure that they don't get near. And I know Clarence at one point told Lex that they hear something out there, and I know for me at one point I would kind of be terrified knowing that there is a lion out there, and it's terrifying to know that they're out there probably stalking or watching us, and it would be kind of terrifying because, let's face it, I'm sure nobody wants to be, even though it would be a terrible death, I'm sure nobody would want to get mauled by a lion if they were to die from that. That's a terrible thing to die from, being mauled by a lion. But to really make matters worse, it wasn't just one lion that was out there. It was actually 2 lions. If that doesn't increase the shakiness level for you on how terrifying that is, I don't know what is. And that just goes to show that this really is real, and you really are having to deal with wild animals out there, even at night. And you have to be wary about that, making sure that nothing bad happens. So we cut to the next day. They saw that there were tracks outside, lion tracks. They were circling around, and that just lets everybody know that they really need to make sure that they don't get in. So they start adding more thorn branches is onto their on their border, make sure that it was high enough to keep the lions out, just in case they try to jump over. And it was definitely more improved now than it has been more. We then cut to Samburu. Once again, we are seeing that the gap between the old and the young is still divided. And now Silas officially confirms that he is still with the young group. He's not going to shift from them. And if they do get in a tie with one person from the old group and one person from the young group, if they're able to deadlock, and if there was a scenario where one person is voted out from Samburu, that would give the younger crowd a number or advantage over the older players. And they start to realize that. As the older people who were going out to get the water, the younger people stay behind just so they can make breakfast. And it was a really selfish thing. I'm not gonna lie, it was really selfish that the younger group, they got to cook the breakfast, and they got the bigger pieces and less charred bits. they basically got the best out of the pickings and left whatever hurt they could for the older folks to get what they need. And they said, if they don't like what they got, they can always make more. That's just very selfish, in my opinion. I'm just gonna point that out. That was very selfish. And they were really trying to get into their heads. They even stated they were trying to get into their heads. They were really trying to annoy them with their ways of sunbathing, or how they're chatting like they're best friends, and like how this is a camp out. And I remember at one point there was a time where Lindsay's necklace broke and it had a lot of beads on it, and that was bothering some of the old folks. And Lindsay made necklaces, and the necklace had one bead for each Kim, KP, Brandon, Silas, and she got the rest of the beads, and she didn't make anything for the old folks. It's very clear that they were definitely divided, and even the old folks were knowing that, and they know that they're trying to like get them bothered by how much they're trying to annoy them. And Carl even makes a point to where they're here to win $1 million, or at least win a game. And this isn't a YMCA. They didn't come to the YMCA to roast marshmallows or to make more friends. This is a game for $1 million. And Silas, the sneaky person that he is, sneaky game player that he is, Silas kind of like, he does this scenario where he's pointing out that Carl has all this nice stuff. Like he's got like a Porsche, a sedan, or a Mercedes, and he's trying to like point out the fact that Carl seems to be somebody who doesn't need $1 million. And he's really pointing this out to young folks, and it's really getting to their heads that Carl is somebody who doesn't need to play the game, and that he doesn't need to stay around all that long. And they start to see that. And it was a very... Okay, let's be real. And I want to point this out to... Alright. I'm going to be real with you. If you're rich enough, and you have a well-paid job that gives you a lot of money to give you an affordable house that's really expensive, or a lot of cars for you to drive, if you're that rich, why go on Survivor? You don't need to play Survivor. You know, some people are here to win $1 million. They need the money more than those people have. And if I'm going to be real with you, if you're saying that you got a nice house, or you've made a couple millions here and there, then I'm going to be real with you. I don't need you around here. You don't need to win this game. I do. I need $1 million more than you. I mean, alright. And also, I want to point out this. I don't want to play Survivor just because the prize is $1 million. I mean, would I like to have $1 million just so I could be financially stable? Yes. But am I going to be on Survivor just because I need $1 million? No. I want to play Survivor because I want to play the game. I want to live the adventure. And I want to show and prove to myself that I could be more than who I am. I could be more than just the big geek who knows Power Rangers or Survivor and every freaking movie that he watches. I want to show that I could be... I know there's a side of me that's a really big competitor and wants to do what he can to win. And I know there's a part of me that wants to be a smart, strategic person, and also show a side where they could do well in the environment, that he can look out on his own. And if I were to be on Survivor, I hope I get a chance to prove that I am more than what I am. And I'm really crossing my fingers on that, and that I'm hoping that I'm more than what I am. But yeah, if you're already rich and you're on Survivor, you don't need $1 million. I mean, you can play the game, but are you gonna try to beat me? But are you going to be in this game and try to beat me just so you can make it to the end and win $1 million even though you're already rich? No. I'm gonna beat you first before you can beat me. So yeah, those of you who are rich and are already rich and get to play Survivor, look out, because you're gonna be on my target. Because I need to win more than you do. So with that being said, we then cut to the reward challenge. This challenge is called Rolling Stones. I think it's called Rolling Stones because this challenge includes a really big boulder, almost like straight out of Indiana Jones. This is the first time this challenge was ever brought up. And the last time this challenge was at least seen, or at least this type of item that was seen in this challenge, was used in Survivor 44, if I'm not mistaken, where they had these big boulders and they had to push them and move them through certain obstacle points. And those things are heavy. And I know there's probably one point where they've mentioned that the boulders are made out of some kind of material or some kind of like cement but I would like to know firsthand myself if those boulders are heavy, because I'm sure it's hard to move those things. Hard to move those things anyway. But yeah, for the challenge, they got these two big boulders. Each tribe has one. They have to move the boulders through certain entries or points of the course. And there's a finish. I know there's like 3 or 2 checkpoints that they had to go through in order to move on to the next one. Whoever makes it to finish first and lands their boulder perfectly, he wins the reward. Now the reward is this big like water tank, like almost, I wouldn't say a gallon, like 500 gallons of water, I would say is probably the most accurate, or 50 gallons, like 50, I'd say around the 50 mark of clean water, good use, and make sure that you don't like waste anything. But if you do decide to waste it, they gave you this like bottle of like shampoo and conditioner or something, and you need to wash your hair if you're feeling like you need to waste water just so you can wash yourself. Now we get into the challenge, and we can already see the tribes are struggling to move these boulders around. Like they're pushing them, they're trying to get them to stop. And I remember one point Kim Johnson and Kelly Goldsmith were like getting mowed by the other tribe's boulder. I remember one of them was like crashing into the bush, and I don't know if the bush had thorns on it. I think it did, but it must have hurt getting stampeded by that. Oh, I hate to be that person. Shoot, if it ever works out for me, maybe I might be that person if they do bring that challenge. Here's hoping not. But I know it was hard trying to get the boulders through like the entryways or the checkpoints, because at one point the boulder was rolling down the hill, and Jeff was like, "No, Samburu, you gotta get it through the flags or entry point." And it was hard. I'm sure it was hard. It was heavy. And I know Boran had their struggles too, especially with Kim and Kelly getting pushed over and knocked down. It was hard, but they managed, I'll say it, they managed to win this challenge. It was definitely a confidence boost that they needed after they recently lost 2 tribe members, and they needed this win and for their morality and for their confidence. Plus, it's nice to have a tank or a water or bin or water or well that had so much water in it. Nice clean water. That's nice to have. And then we get into the immunity challenge. Now this is a very classic challenge too. I don't see it anymore. It's called the stress signal. Basically what you have to do is there will be a plane coming by and the tribe members have to make a signal to the plane that will get their best attention. Whoever can get the plane's attention and a lot better than the other tribe will win immunity. And the winning tribe will have a crate that has the immunity idol in it be dropped out of the plane and be parachuted and land so that the tribe can get it. Okay, so for Samburu, they have that big border already here with the thorns that's made of. They thought they could make an SOS with that, and the border could be the O, and they started making big S's out of it. And during that whole building process, I would say, they're making the S's, and I know Lindsay for one, she was being very hard and trying to like make sure that they get all the supplies they need by breaking off branches with their feet, breaking off big branches. I know some of the older folks, they were making sure to take their time wisely and take some breaks, make sure that they get enough water so that they can last out there. And Lindsay was like, she's strong, she's powerful, oh, she can do it, and doesn't even take breaks at all. But KP at one point found Lindsay on the floor, like lying down and crying because she felt like she was getting sick and maybe dehydrated. And Lindsay was crying, saying that she's not weak, and Linda went to go check on her, making sure that she was okay, but Lindsay was like, no. And that was actually an immature thing from Lindsay to do, especially for somebody who's very concerned about her, making sure that she was okay. She almost kind of felt embarrassed at that point, I would say. You know, she's been saying how strong she is and how she's a big competitor, but I guess she's not that strong after all, as Lindsay stated. And I know Frank at one point was like, Barbie went down in Africa. Almost like an insult to Lindsay. That was unfortunate. Well, let's face it, like, if you're gonna save all that energy after resting for so long and not really working that hard and just find yourself lying down after working so much, then why say that you're a strong competitor? Like, I don't get it. But moving over to Baran, they have an interesting plan. So they're also going to do the same SOS thing, but they're not going to do it with their camp. They got an open area, like an open field that's all space, so that way their signal could be noticed easier. They got all the debris and camp supplies that they have so that they can make their SOS. They even took the mosquito nets that they have. And Kim Johnson, she actually brought acrylic paints with her as her luxury item, and she soaked the mosquito nets in them. And there were 4 mosquito nets. They were different colors, red, blue, green, and it was either orange or yellow with the 4th one. And they got their tribe flag and they got their buffs, and at one point they all decided to strip down to their underwear, especially Kim. And whew, all I gotta say about Kim was that whatever helps. That's all I gotta say. Whatever helps. And Big Tom was definitely worth making a fool out of himself, because he put Feather down. He had Feather, or how do I say this without making it sound disturbing? I mean, it's already disturbing since you're already down to their underwear. But Tom had this feather that he put on the backside of his shorts, and it looked like it was coming out of his crack. And he was moving it, trying to get the flow, and I'm like, oh, good grief. Tom, you're a character. But yeah, so the tribes had their signals, and the plane was coming by. Now, Jeff is there along with the pilot and the experienced drop master to judge the challenge. As they flew over Samburu, who Frank was trying to get their attention and yelling, and it was like Lindsay. Lindsay, after being tired and disoriented, was like, Frank dropped dead. Which once again showed how immature Lindsay is. And after asking the drop master about their opinion, Jeff was told that the drop master, even though he sees that there is an SOS there, he feels that the debris that they used to make the SOS would just look like it's all part of land, and it would almost make it not noticeable as much. Now we move over to Baran, and they're all waving the flags and banners around. Tom doing his dance with the feather coming out of his crack. It was silly, it was awkward, but you can't help but laugh. And the drop master was really impressed that they know that Baran used their environment well, with the open area next to their camp and the SOS being very clearable, and with the use of color added to their SOS. After discussing with the pilot and the drop master, they agreed because of the use of color and the use of the environment, Baran wins the immunity challenge. So after they declared a winner, Jeff and the drop master were able to drop the crate with the immunity idol and have it parachuted down to the SOS area where Baran has set it up. And Baran has won their first immunity challenge. Good grief. It took them long enough. But now we got tribal council now. And Samburu gets to go to the first time. It's clear that there's a battle of the ages here. And eventually one of them's gonna have to go from either group of Samburu. Now, let's be real. If I were in a group where it's divided by age, where you got younger people on one side and older people on the other, I'm gonna be real. I like meeting with a group of people that's more around my age, but at the same time, I can't help but feel like I gotta be really mature about these things. And if I'm doing something to offend somebody, I will stand up and admit to it and talk to them about it. And I'm not gonna act immature about anything or whatever. I'm gonna be the bigger person and really own up to my mistakes if I were to make any. So that would be me in that scenario. But now, we get the tribal council. It's clear that Lindsay has been viewed as the target by the older people due to her being very immature, and how she was saying that she was strong even though she fell down during the immunity challenge. And then we got the younger kids looking at Carl as their target because they see that he's already rich and that he doesn't need the $1 million, so he shouldn't be staying there any longer than he should. So we get to the vote. I apologize. And as predicted, we have a tie between Lindsay and Carl, 4-4. Now, they get to vote again. Lindsay and Carl will not vote, and they state their case on why they would have to stay around, that why they should stay around longer than the other person. Lindsay particularly definitely points out that Carl doesn't need to be here if he's already rich and successful in his work, and he doesn't need the $1 million. She really tries to make that point stand out to the other people. And I gotta say this, Jeff even notices that the younger players had bead necklaces around their neck while the older people didn't. He already sees that there's a generation gap there, and it's interesting. I mean, they said that they are friends, like they are friends with the older people, but they have their own special connection that they have that doesn't include the older people. And as much as I could believe in that or not, I would just say, sure. Say it. I mean, I don't know the reality of that. I'm sure they are actually good friends. I'm sure they do keep in contact with each other. But we get to the vote again, and once again we have a tie. Now they are deadlocked, unfortunately, which means they had to go to another tiebreaker. And here's how it works. You see, each of them has been given a guide, has been given a book on the Bush survival guide. Jeff is going to ask them questions that are in the survival guide, and if one of them guesses wrong, they're out. As simple as that. So Lindsay and Carl are given a notebook, or a book to write in, and a pen to write with. I know for the first question, in that that both Carl and Lindsay answered true. They both got it right. Next question, it was a multiple choice question. Lindsay guessed B, Carl was D, and the correct answer was C. Next question, both Lindsay and Carl guessed false when it was actually true. Then we move on to the next question. Now this question I remember fondly because it does actually happen later on as the series goes. Season goes, I mean. If bitten by a termite, pouring hot water directly on where the termite is will immediately get the termite out. True or false? Lindsay answers true. Carl says false. And the correct answer was true. Which means Carl is the first person voted out of Survivor Africa and the first person to leave the Samburu tribe. And that leaves the older people down to three members, while the younger people still have their 4. And so that ends episode 3. And we are now at the point where we end this podcast episode. Now, normally I would have a question and for you guys to answer. I'm mixing up my own deal here. Normally I would have something to give you guys, like a question for me to answer to really challenge my Survivor knowledge. But because this was kind of like, this is, I'm gonna be real. Doing this new format with me shooting a video for you guys, the podcast has, and really seeing how well I do with this, I'm testing new things out. Audio wasn't exactly kind of working to my favor. People need to see something, and they're sick and tired of looking at the same thing. So I'm hoping that by doing a visual episode for my podcast, maybe it will get more attention. As far as the questions go, I don't know. I'm hoping I can do that in the future, where I can have somebody send me a question and I'll answer them. But for right now, in this video, that's going to be kind of like kept at a pause. And whether it will come back, that is yet to be determined. But nonetheless, thank you guys so much for watching this episode of Survivor Savant podcast. Yes, I am happy to be watching Survivor Africa. I'm happy to be watching the seasons. It's also one of my favorites. And I'm excited to tell you guys more about what's going to happen and as the season continues and what I find fascinating and what I find a lot of fun about this season. It's going to be a lot of laughs. It's going to be a lot of really cool storytelling that's happening in this season. And I look forward to sharing it with you guys, and I hope to see this podcast really take off and really evolve from where I currently am right now. I really hope it continues on. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Until next time, I hope you enjoyed being outclassed, outsmarted, and outspoken with the Survivor Savant podcast. This is Nathan Newport, signing out. See you guys later.